So we were looking for another dog, and my mom saw in the newspaper an ad for a beagle, and she thought, wow, a beagle would be a great dog. And so we called about the beagle, and the woman on the other end said, we no longer have the beagle, but we have this border collie. And my mom and I looked at each other and we said, a border collie sounds pretty good. And we drove 2 hours to take a look at Gracie, who was at a rescue at the time. And we took her. We took her home with us that day. And my story with Gracie is the reason why I'm sitting in front of you right now, recording this for you, because she's the reason I train, and she's the reason I care deeply and passionately about problem dogs, about how we raise our puppies to avoid the problems. And it was really the journey to help Gracie become whole, to find emotional stability, that led me to all of this. So she was 2 when we got her. She was feisty, she was volatile, and she absolutely became my world. I lived to take her for runs, explore hiking paths, throw the ball, and she was my best friend. But she had that darker side. She was a hellion. She was unpredictable with people, terrible with dogs, attacked the car window when you would drive. She never stopped barking, never stopped drooling. Taking her anywhere in the car was not fun at all. And as a responsible owner that just loved her more than anything, I was turning over every training rock I could find. I took her sheep herding. We did obedience classes. I watched and studied all the videos on Cesar Millan, tried to find my inner pack leader, and I used a lot of positive reinforcement as well. And by the end of it all, Gracie had superb obedience. But as I like to say, she was an obedient, aggressive dog, because whenever I needed her obedience to stick, it broke down, which was always in her trigger situations. New people, new dogs, things going on outside of the house, and she would look out the window and she would be barking. And we lived on pins and needles. But I didn't necessarily need Gracie to be a really well-behaved dog. I just wanted to feel like I was reaching her. And deep inside, I didn't feel like I was reaching her. There just seemed to be a piece of her I couldn't understand. So after exploring all these different training avenues, I thought, well, the next logical step was to become a trainer. And I kind of thought the clouds would part, a path lit by the sun would guide me to a way that would help Gracie find well-being and wholeness. But it wasn't the case. But by this time, I had a fire in my belly, and I was going to find a way to help her. And after a few more years of helping dogs like Gracie, I found Kevin Bean of Natural Dog Training. And I accidentally got his book for Christmas. It was not on my Christmas list, but that was the book that was wrapped and under the tree. And after I read the introduction, I just knew that what he was saying was completely different, and it was what I was looking for. So I packed Gracie up, and we drove to Vermont to do a 3-day workshop with Kevin. And it's the visual. The visual is just so tangible in my mind. But we stood in a field, a big open field. There was about 20 of us. We were circled in a horseshoe, all holding our dogs. So, no one's driving up to see Kevin because they have a really nice social dog. So these dogs are reactive, they're barking, they're pulling, lunging, drooling. And Kevin stood just very calm, very grounded in the middle of the horseshoe, and he had his long, thick thundercracker rope. And he approached me and Gracie, and he instructed me to hold her tight on the leash, don't let her run away. And he started swinging his rope like a pendulum with this back and forth movement. He would swipe her paws. Every once in a while, he would crack it like thunder. And Gracie did everything she could to run away and hide behind me. And your immediate gut reaction is to let her go and run with her. But Kevin said, no, hold her. Hold her tight, because fear can't work for her anymore. She's got to find her inner courage. And suddenly, Gracie leapt forward, and she bit that rope like an alligator, throwing her whole being into the pure bliss of this bite. And I'm standing there shocked because Kevin is cheering and clapping his hands. He let her win her prize. She pulled it back into her lair like a lion returning with their kill. The whole audience was instructed to clap and cheer her on. And then he told me to stroke her spine, telling her what a good, brave girl she was. And afterward, immediately afterward, she laid at my feet and this like self-settled down, and she was breathing with such an ease, and it was deep. And I had never witnessed her breathing like that before. And I knew, I could feel it, that she was completely satisfied, and in that moment he had reached her. He had reached this place inside of her that I had not been able to reach. And she stayed there in that down while all these other dogs took the turn at the scary rope. We cheered, and they were all finding their inner courage to let out everything they had been holding back. And from that day forward, I did a lot of bite work with Gracie, and she loved the rope. And by the end of her life, she was playing with dogs. She was letting strangers rub her belly. It just completely brought back this little puppy. She was no longer brittle and fragile and reactive. She was social. So on that day, I really learned one of the greatest lessons that has led to a career in trying to reach dogs like Gracie. That Gracie didn't have a mental problem. I'd been treating her symptoms like her behavior was the result of good or bad decision making. And if I was consistent and I kept applying this system of rewards and corrections, it would lead to better decision making on her part that aligned with my values. But in that moment with Kevin, he taught me she didn't have a mental problem. She had a physical problem. How could she move the energy that had been building inside of her throughout her whole lifetime? You know, where does her junk go? Her stress, her fear, her panic and anxiety? How does she bring relief to her system? And, you know, if she couldn't do that through me, then she's going to discharge elsewhere. We can only hold on to our stress, our junk for so long before it needs to come out of the system. So Gracie became, you know, hyper vigilant about the mailman, ready to go at the window and attack the mailman. You know, it went to strangers. It would go to dogs, cats. And she was stuck in this cyclical loop, like she was addicted to that feeling of trying to discharge all of that junk that had been accumulating in her. And she would temporarily feel better, but she never reached a place of satisfaction because she needed to continue to do it. And when Gracie discharged, there's nothing I could do or say in that moment to recover her. All of her training went out the window. She was truly in a state of survival. How do I survive this moment? And on that day with Kevin and the rope in Vermont, I learned how to help Gracie move her junk, to give her the bite, to let her let out what she had been holding back. And it was truly my awakening to give my dog a bite, to say, this is where you bite, this is where you put your charge, this is where it goes. And after I developed that with her, everything changed. You know, her system returned to a state, a social state, a reliable state, a more predictable state. And that's such awakening. That is such an awakening. Think about that for a minute. You know, we sit down with a therapist, right? We all go to therapy because we're stressed and we have anger or guilt or depression or anxiety or issues that are deeply plaguing us. And when we sit down in front of the therapist and we tell the therapist our deepest, darkest junk, the therapist responds with thank you. Thank you for sharing. They don't correct you or judge you for having those feelings. And we begin to feel safe sitting in front of the therapist. And when we think about the people that we truly feel the safest with, they're the people that we trust. They're our family members, our spouses, our best friends. We can share, our deepest, darkest stuff, and we can show up and we can be truly real with them. We're not going to be judged. So this concept that was really taught by Kevin during the time with Gracie, truly, truly transformed my world and my perspective with how I view problem dogs. If we don't address the emotional experience that is going behind, or that is fueling the behavior that these dogs are displaying, the reactivity, the aggression, the anxiety that's compelling us to call trainers and ask for help, if we don't address the emotional experience, the stored stress, the junk, everything that they're holding back in their efforts to be good dogs and good dogs, then, we're always going to be working against something we can't completely overcome. So if your dog could ask you one question, they would say, where can I move my energy? Where can I bite? Where can my junk, where can my stress go? And if we can receive that from them, then they truly begin to trust us. And when we then apply our obedience and our impulse control on top of that foundation, now we have a dog that can focus and can listen, even in situations that trigger them and bring up fear. So, I hope Gracie's story inspires you, and I hope that if you feel compelled to check out Rising Canine Dog Training, there is a home for every problem dog here. It is my passion, and thank you.